What's going on, guys? It's Almond. Welcome back to another Wizard101 video. In today's video, I wanted to go over all the cantrip changes. I feel like nobody in the community is kind of going over the cantrip changes, and they do play a huge part when it comes to doing raids. I know there are some strategies where you don't need to do cantrips, and there are some where people actually do use them. So I felt like it was a need that somebody in the community did actually go over the cantrips and the buffs and nerfs for all of them, including the new cantrip that was added within all the cantrips. So that's what we're going to be going over. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Be sure to leave, like, subscribe, all that type of stuff, and let's get into it. So we'll start off with donate power. I made images for all of these so it's easier for a lot of players to see what the changes are, and you can just skip right ahead if you do want to. But I know a lot of people do like sitting through these and see my explanation on most of these. So let's get into it. So the original donate power was 20 energy, and it gave all the people that were in the battle 1 extra pip. Now what the change they did is they lowered the cost of it, and it's 16 energy instead of 20. So you do save a little bit of energy on some pips per se. Then we move over to donate power 2. They also lower the cost on this by 6 energy. It's still the same mechanic as well. If you cast this onto the battle, you do get a power pip, and that's mainly for all the people that are in that fight. If we go over to donate power 3, the main change is on here is that the cost is shredded by 8 energy. So you do save 8 energy, and I feel like this is an overall good change as well, because 40 energy, it felt like a lot. So 100%, I think this is a really good change. Now we move over to Dual Strike 1. Dual Strike 1 is actually got changed, and now it's going to cost 4 more energy than it did before. I mean, you do get more value from Dual Strike because it is giving you extra damage, so you got to keep that in mind. And I feel like the 4 pips or the 4 energy cost difference, that's okay in my opinion. I feel like there's some other changes slash nerfs that are bigger than these, and adding 4 energy to Dual Strike to me was not that big of an issue, at least in my eyes. I feel like other people have different opinions, but I think for me personally, and what I will be using it for, I think it's fine. Then we have Dual Strike 2s. Dual Strike 2s were increased by 2 energy, but the trap is now increased by 5%, which I really think this is a good change, especially going back from my previous one, which is Dual Strike 1. Instead of it being 15%, it's just straight up 30%, but while this one is just 15 as a whole, while this one is just, you know, it is 30, but you do have to pay the extra 2 energy before the previous one, which was 30 energy. So it's a big buff, 5 extra percent, and it's costing 2 energy. I think that's a big W, 100%. So I think this is a really good change as well. Then we move over to Dual Strike 3 as well. It was getting a buff, so 5 extra percent on the trap and 2 energy on the cost. Big W on this as well. I don't have any issues with this. I think the Dual Strike change was perfect. I don't think I have any gripes at all. So definitely good change. Now we move on to Fieries. Fieries were changed in certain directions. I think that they realized that for Fieries, we didn't use them too much to the point where it's like, okay, we always need to use it for the damage. We mainly just used it for setting up stuff. Before the elf got its spell elements and stuff like that, we used to use Fieries to set up certain mechanics like the PvP spells and having the 2 overtimes to set up tree for fire. That's mainly what we use Fieries for. So what they did was they lowered the damage of it and higher the cost, because to me it seems like they were thinking in the right direction, where you're not using it for the damage, you're just mainly setting it up for Scion. So for that reason they higher the cost and from what it looks like. Same thing on Fieries 2. Fiery 2 does, it's costing 6 more energy, and you're definitely, it cuts the damage almost in half. So keep that in mind when you're using your Fiery 2s. If they do taking damage, just be in mind it's not going to do a crazy amount, and you also got to consider on who it's casting on. That also plays a part as well. Then we move over to Fiery 3s. So Fiery 3s were not nerfed, which caught me off guard, because if you go back and as we can check, Fiery 2s did get nerfed. They got their damage cut in half and the cost was way more. And same thing for Fiery 1s. The damage was, you know, lowered a bit and the cost was more. Fiery 3s exactly the same. Nothing has changed. They just changed the art on the card so it's visually better, because so people understand it easier, and it doesn't take too much space, which is a good direction that they're going in with further down the line with all these new cards. But I think it was good that they left it how it is. I don't think it needed to change 100%. So other than the art, I think it's good. Legion Shield. I know a lot of people, there were lots of people who never use Legion Shield, and it was used mainly as like a last resort type thing. Like, hey, I'm about to die. Like, that's the only time I've seen somebody use Legion Shield, and it was like just as a joke card. So they definitely changed it so it's a little bit more viable, and I can see where it's viable in certain ways. But instead of doing a -45 on tier 1, they basically almost cut it in half and put it as 2 shields that give you -25 at Legion Shield 1, which honestly I think that's a good change, because why would you use Legion Shield when you can just Vplay? That's just better in my opinion. So this can help set up certain gambits, and I think a lot of players will probably be using this in certain strategies, whether it be for the last raid, which is the Void raid, or for this new one, that the Azteca one. So definitely I think this is a really good change as well. Then we move over to Legion Shield 2. It's the same thing as Legion Shield 2 for the previous one, but all they did was increase the cost by 2 energy. Nothing bad. I don't think people are going to complain about 2 energy, especially since the first one, even though it costs 4 more extra energy, at least it's giving you 2 shields, so you can block against 2 attacks versus 1 attack. I guess it depends on what you feel, depending on what the enemy's doing, but if you feel like you're getting multiple hits, I think just -25 is fine, and it's easier to set up the gambits on Legion Shield 1. So Legion Shield 2, all it did was increase the energy cost by 2. Legion Shield 3 got a change, and it's basically a buff. So instead of it being a -45 shield, now it's a -55 shield. But I think if you look by judging by the cards, it's no longer protected because they have the brackets. Without the brackets, that means it's not a protected shield anymore. So it is -55, just 2 shields, which I don't think that's a big issue in my eyes. I think just increasing it is fine, but I mean, most likely I'm not going to be using Legion Shield 3s in combat. But me personally, at least, I think I'm going to be using Legion Shield 1 more than anything to set up gambits. But I guess it just depends on the player, what they're trying to do. Now we move over to Restoring Rain. Restoring Rain is such a good card because a lot of people, especially in Void Raid, we used to use a lot of Restoring Rains. I wouldn't say a lot to the point where it's like excess, but we would use it here and there quite often compared to other ones. And all he did was just increase the cost by 4 energy. The whole mechanic behind it is still exactly the same. Still gives you 2 blades for all the allies. Move over to Restoring Rain 2. Same thing. It's exactly the same. Just all he did was increase the cost by 2. So keep that in mind. Same thing for Restoring Rain as well. The third one is exactly the same. So Restoring Rain overall just didn't get any changes too much, other than the cost being increased by 2 and Restoring Rain 1 getting its cost increased by 4, because they felt like players would probably be using this a little bit more compared to Restoring Rain 2 and 3, which is understandable. Now we move over to Sprite Swarm. To me, this was the biggest change out of all of them. I think it's up to interpretation on how you feel. Just feel like this one, I think I noticed way more while cooking up strategies, is that Sprite Swarm 1 is still fine. I don't think it needed a change too much, but I get where they're coming from. And they lowered the amount of healing that you get for the overtime, and they also increased the cost of it. So the initial heal is still going to give you the 55. It's still going to be on all your allies, but the overtime is going to be 360 instead of 525, which to be honest is a big change, and I'll tell you why down the line when we move over to the next 2 cards. So Sprite Swarm 2 used to give you 2 healing overtimes, and each one of those would be 110 initial heal and then a 525 healing overtime. Now hear me out. To me, this is a big change. The reason why I'm saying that is, if you're trying to set up gambits with 2 healing overtimes, you can't really do that easy. You can't just cast a Sprite Swarm 2 for 30 energy and then literally, like within a round or 2, just instantly go for Jhin or instantly go for any type of gambit that requires 2 healing overtimes and just smack people around in raids, or even hard tier content. So just keep that in mind moving forward. Sprite Worm 2 and 3 do not give you a extra heal. So like if we move over to Sprite Worm 3, you can see that it doesn't give you the 2 heals. Now what it does is the initial 1 heal, it has a bigger healing over time. So instead of it doing 540 for both of those, just it gives you 1 heal and it's 990, which still I prefer the old one, but it's okay. The cost is still the same. If you go back to Sprite Storm 2, the cost is increased by 2 as well, but you also are getting a single heal that is doing more. But the old one is just still better because you're getting 2 heals. And another thing is Sprite Swarm takes a lot of animation time, so I think that's why you got to also take that in consideration while setting up the gambit like nothing. Now let's move over to Vplay. Vplay got basically shredded. I guess it depends on your interpretation, especially for setting up gambits. But instead of doing a minus 40 weakness on the enemy, now it's just giving you them 2 minus 10s, and it's also increasing the cost. I feel like this was mainly meant to be for setting up gambits, but we'll see how it goes moving forward. Because personally, I didn't use V-Plagues, and I don't know if I'm still going to be using them. But we'll have to see later down the line whenever we do Void Raid again with all these AoE changes, if they're going to affect us a lot. Especially with the Dragoon being nerfed, because everyone just used to use Dragoons on the left side. Everyone did it. You don't pretend like you didn't do that, because we all used to do it. But now we can't do that anymore. So definitely, this is a big change as well. But I still think the Sport one was way more. Now we go to Vplay 2. The cost is increased and the weaknesses are still cut in half, but you're still getting 2 weaknesses. So you're still getting 2 minus 20s, and that are going to be set to everybody on the field enemy wise. So keep that in mind when using these. Then we have Vplay 3. So from what my testing was, is that in test realm, these are still protected. It just didn't say that they are protected. So the original Vplague 3 gave a minus 40 and it gave you 2. This one gives you minus 30, but it's still 40 energy. But they are protected. It just doesn't say it in the text, or the V-Plagues are not supposed to be protected. So I'll have to figure that out for you guys, and just, you know, I'll put a comment somewhere in this video and double check. But at the moment you can have protected V-Plagues because we saw them in the raid. So just letting you know about that. But yes, they are lowered to minus 30s now instead of minus 40s. Now the last thing that I have to talk about is the new cantrip. The new cantrip that is coming to Live Realm. I don't know how viable this will be. Maybe it just depends on the team. But Horn of Plenty, that is the new cantrip. I haven't tested it yet, right? But I know that this cantrip does exist. And what it is just a unicorn. So my thing is, this can help in certain fights. Essentially, instead of waiting for a revive on like a Sprite Swarm or something like that, you can just cast Word of Plenty, which would be more value in my opinion, because you can instantly, like, let's say the person needed to cast a cleanse or something like that. I guess it depends on the situation as well, but I feel like in my raid attempts, I don't think I'm going to be using this. I can see where it's valued, I can see how useful it is, and it's not a bad cantrip. I wouldn't say this cantrip is totally bad, why did they add it? Each cantrip has its own value in my opinion, and setting up certain things depending on your team. So I think at the moment for us, we're not going to be using it, but there's not a bad thing just having a Horn of Plenty in your side deck, or not your side deck, but just having some of them crafted on your account. It's not a bad thing. But overall, those are all the cantrips that were updated / changed, and especially this new cantrip that was added to Wizard101. Let me know your thoughts below in the comments, and there will be a lot more test run videos coming out soon, especially since it's the weekend. I have way more time to now edit due to the fact there's no raiding, and I can just get time to edit these videos for you guys and just post out a lot of content because I've been quite busy. So hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that type of stuff, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys.